Welcome to this explainer on the architecture of innovation. Today, we're diving into a pretty brutal reality of the modern business landscape, which is basically this: if an organization stands still, it's going to get run over.
Sheer size used to be the ultimate competitive advantage. You get big enough, you're safe, right? Well, today, that's practically a recipe for failure, and the corporate world absolutely knows it. A survey by the Boston Consulting Group found that a staggering 75% of companies rank innovation as a top 3 priority. And we're not talking about a quick quarterly bump here. We're talking about long-term survival. Without a systematic approach to evolving, competitiveness simply dies.
Just take a look at the stark contrast between the corporate titans of 1980 and 2018. The massive oil and manufacturing conglomerates of the 80s, they've largely been replaced by tech and consumer-centric models. It really proves that massive size just isn't enough to save you anymore. Think about Sears. They dominated retail for 70 years, but completely succumbed to stagnation. On the flip side, you've got IBM, who survived the death of the mainframe era specifically because they embraced really painful, systemic innovation. So, how do you map out a survival strategy? Well, we can actually evaluate innovation along 2 distinct axes. First up is your business model. Are you leveraging your existing profit engine, or are you trying to build a brand new one? And second, your technical capabilities. Are you using competencies you already have in-house, or are you venturing into entirely new technological frontiers? When you intersect those 2 dimensions, you get Gary Pisano's Innovation Modes Matrix. This framework is fantastic because it categorizes all innovation into 4 distinct archetypes: routine, disruptive, radical, and architectural. It really proves that innovation isn't just this one big monolith. It's an entire landscape with varying degrees of risk and strategy. So let's break these down. Okay, we'll start in the most predictable, comfortable territory, which is routine innovation. This is where a company simply builds upon its existing tech to provide upgraded solutions to its existing customers. It's incremental, is predictable, and it leverages the exact same business model you already rely on. A textbook example of this would be Intel's continuous release of new microprocessors. Year after year, they deploy their world-class fabrication capabilities, tech they've already completely mastered, without altering their fundamental business model of selling chips to manufacturers. It's highly effective, boundary-pushing play, but it stays within the lines.
But what happens when you step out of that comfort zone? That brings us to disruptive innovation. Now, this one doesn't actually require a deep technological breakthrough. You're still using existing capabilities. The disruption comes from weaponizing a completely new business model against competitors who are still playing by the old rules.
Take Google's Android, for instance. To create it, Google drew heavily upon its massive existing software expertise. The tech itself wasn't alien to them at all. But by making it open source and basically giving it away to capture search and ad revenue, they completely shattered the mobile industry's business rules. They used tech they knew inside and out to execute a business model literally nobody saw coming. Now, flipping the script, we have radical innovation. Here, a company pursues a massive technological leap, something that requires entirely new scientific breakthroughs. But paradoxically, this massive leap still fits perfectly within the way the company already makes its money. It's basically a technical revolution that preserves the commercial status quo.
A great way to picture this is when major pharmaceutical firms entered biotechnology. That was a massive scientific shift from traditional chemical compounds to genetics. But their business model? Completely untouched. They still patented the drugs, they ran the clinical trials, and they used their massive sales networks to distribute them. So radical tech, but a totally routine business model.
So, we've seen what happens when you just change the tech, and we've seen what happens when you just change the business model. But what happens when incremental steps are simply no longer enough? What happens when a company has to alter the very foundation of how it operates and what it produces?
Enter architectural innovation. This is the absolute climax of our matrix, and honestly, the most aggressive form of corporate change out there. It happens when an organization must simultaneously adopt a completely new business model and an entirely new technical competencies. Basically, you are tearing down and rebuilding the entire strategic architecture of the company all at once.
As you can imagine, this creates immense difficulties for established firms. Think about it like this. A hybrid engine was just a component innovation. It didn't change the car's basic architecture. But a battery-powered electric motor? That forces car makers to redesign the vehicle from the ground up. acquire completely new tech capabilities, and invent brand new business models around charging ecosystems. The risk is astronomical.
For a really sobering cautionary tale, look at Kodak. The ultimate irony here, Kodak actually invented the first digital camera. But their fatal flaw was that digital imaging required abandoning their highly lucrative business model of selling physical film. The architectural shift was just too daunting for them. They couldn't bring themselves to abandon their core profit engine while learning a new technology. So they buried it. And ultimately, it buried them.
But it absolutely can be done. Look at Alphabet. They use routine innovation for things like Google search, but they use architectural innovation for Waymo. Waymo demands entirely new tech in AI and robotics, plus a completely new business model for commercializing driverless transport. It totally redefines the strategic architecture of the entire industry.
Looking at the matrix as a whole, the contrast is super stark. You've got the predictable safety of routine innovation on one end and the extreme risk of architectural innovation on the other. Now, strategy is all about focus, right? But the fatal side effect of routine focus is developing a blind spot. You have to balance competing today with investing in the architectural shifts that are going to be required for tomorrow.
And making architectural innovation work brings us to a massive internal hurdle: company culture. You have to somehow reconcile unconstrained creativity with strict financial discipline. One of our sources captures this beautifully, saying, "The two cultures of the ponytail and the suit are a world apart and combustible together." Getting the rule breakers and the commercial strategists to actually collaborate rather than combust is your ultimate leadership challenge.
Which brings us right back to your strategic planning. Knowing this landscape, where does your company fit on this map right now? Are you resting safely in routine innovation, maybe risking the fate of Sears? When you look at your next big idea, is it going to disrupt the market, push the boundaries of science, or require you to architect an entirely new future? The matrix is laid out. The next move is yours.